They didn't crucify him. They didn't burn him. They crushed him alive, slowly, deliberately, his body reduced to pulp beneath the cold weight of iron hammers. The sound of splintering bone echoed through the hall until he twisted into laughter, madness, and defiance. This was no ordinary execution. It was a message. His name was Anaxarchus of Abdera, and his mind would prove stronger than any king's cruelty. He had once stood beside Alexander the Great, walking at the right hand of the conqueror who believed himself a god. Anaxarchus was not a soldier or courtier, but a philosopher, a man who believed the soul was untouchable, that pain was illusion, that death itself was meaningless. He had taught Alexander to mock fear and accept fate with laughter. And for a time, the world listened to him. When Alexander died in Babylon, his empire shattered like glass. Generals carved out kingdoms, friends turned to rivals, and the loyal became the hunted. Anaxarchus, now a wanderer without protection, sought refuge in Cyprus. There ruled Nicocreon, tyrant of Salamis, an ambitious and bitter man who had never forgotten how the philosopher once humiliated him before Alexander's court, mocking his ignorance in front of the king. That wound had never healed. Now the balance of power had shifted. Anaxarchus arrived in Salamis thinking he had found safety. Instead, he found revenge waiting. The tyrant had him seized, his possessions stripped, and his name proclaimed as a blasphemer, a man who mocked the gods, scorned kings, and claimed that human suffering meant nothing. His trial was a farce, a ritual of humiliation. He stood before the court, bloodied and bound, as Nicocreon smiled from his throne. The verdict was death, but not swift death. Nicocreon wanted him broken, physically, mentally, spiritually. He ordered a punishment so savage it would echo through history. "Bring the mortar," he said. The guards returned carrying a massive stone bowl, large enough to hold a man. The executioners followed with iron mallets, their heads stained dark from old use. The crowd pressed forward, half in horror, half in anticipation. They had seen floggings, impalements, even crucifixions, but never this. They forced Anaxarchus into the mortar. The cold stone curved around his naked body like a tomb. His breath came in steady bursts, his face pale but calm. He met the tyrant's eyes and smiled. The first hammer fell. The crack was sharp, echoing off the chamber walls. His ribs buckled. A second blow followed, then a third. Bone splintered, blood ran down the grooves of the stone. His body convulsed under the impact, and a low groan escaped his lips. But then, he laughed. It was a hoarse, broken laugh, the sound of a man mocking his tormentor. "You crush the shell of Anaxarchus," he said, "but you cannot crush Anaxarchus himself." His words silenced the crowd. Nicocreon froze. For a moment, the philosopher's voice seemed to rise above the pain, calm and cold as marble. The tyrant's rage erupted. "Strike harder!" he shouted. The hammers rained down. His shoulder cracked, his arms shattered, his legs twisted at unnatural angles. Flesh tore open under the relentless blows. His laughter turned to coughing, spitting blood, but even then, he sneered through broken teeth. Every sound that left his mouth was defiance. They pounded him until the mortar ran red. His skin hung in shreds, his bones ground into powder. Still, his eyes burned with the same mocking fire. Nicocreon leaned close, wanting to see the life leave them. But before the final blow fell, Anaxarchus whispered something that froze the tyrant in place. Some said it was a curse. Others said it was a final laugh, a promise that his name would outlive his killer. The last hammer descended, his skull fractured with a wet crack. Silence followed. Only the dripping of blood from the rim of the mortar broke the stillness. Nicocreon stood over what was left of his enemy, victorious and yet defeated. He had silenced the man's voice, but not his words. When word of the execution spread, The story horrified Greece. Even hardened soldiers who had fought beside Alexander recoiled. They called it an abomination, a crime not of justice, but of fear. Philosophers in Athens whispered his name as a martyr of the mind, the man who proved that the soul could laugh even as the body was destroyed. And in that, Anaxarchus achieved immortality. He had been reduced to pulp, his body unrecognizable, but his defiance became legend. His death was retold in every school of thought from the Aegean to Alexandria. To some, he was arrogant. To others, divine, a mortal who mocked pain and showed that conviction could not be beaten into silence. Even centuries later, when new tyrants rose, they feared philosophers who remembered his name. For what king could truly rule over men who believed that flesh was nothing, that the mind could not die? Anaxarchus's final moments stand as one of history's cruelest executions and one of philosophy's most haunting tests. It was not his theories that survived, but the image of him in that stone bowl, laughing through the blood, daring his killers to continue. His defiance lived longer than any empire. So ask yourself, what would you do when faced with such agony? Could you cling to your beliefs as your bones were shattered one by one? Could you laugh in the face of pain as he did? Tell me what you think. And if you thought this was horrifying, wait until you hear about the man whose intestines were pulled out alive, the gruesome martyrdom of Saint Erasmus in Rome.